There is a heightened state of security in D.C. and all state capitals ahead of the inauguration next week. The FBI says it has been tracking extensive online chatter about the potential for armed protest before or during the festivities next week. Around Washington, they've put a new fence around the U.S. Capitol. There's more than 20,000 National Guard members on hand, and the FBI says it plans to operate an around-the-clock command post at its headquarters in each of its 56 field offices around the country. They're also going to keep crowds out of the National Mall for the inauguration process. Right now, joining us live is Homeland Security expert Don Rondo from his home in Montgomery County. Good morning, Don.
Good morning, Chris.
Yeah, so Don, one of the questions I want to ask you before I talk about the actual security for the event is something that we've talked about in the past. After the riot at the Capitol last week, the Senate went on and affirmed the vote that Joe Biden will be the next president. And there has been much talk about the President Trump's complaints about the election since then. But you still feel that there needs to be a better explanation of what happened in the November election, or there's still going to be that security threat?
Yes, absolutely, Christian. Look, this is the second disputed election, and we're able to convey to the public that we have a solid, sound, and secure election process. We're going to have conflict. Those who follow these types of circumstances from a national security perspective understand that a disputed election is a recipe for conflict. And so we've allowed this type of circumstance to grow and evolve, go unaddressed, and even be politicized to the detriment of everyone here.
I think the response from Democrats, if there has been a response, and there hasn't been much, simply has been that the 70 or so million people who voted for President Trump simply won't be convinced. There's nothing that you can say to them to convince them that Joe Biden won the election. So at this point, they've basically stopped trying.
Well, I think that we need political leadership that can solve these type of issues, or we need people to step aside and let others who can do it. It's very simple to be able to articulate a position that's based in facts. I'm looking at this from a politically neutral security perspective, and you're able to diffuse a situation with facts. And either there was fraud or there wasn't. But what I do know is that you cannot allow tens of millions of people, or perhaps more, to believe that their vote was stolen, do nothing that affects the issue, and expect it to be okay.
So what they have done, Don, is they have added massive security to the U.S. Capitol in advance of the inauguration, some 20,000 members of the National Guard on hand. Before I ask you about any random threats around the country, do you think they've done enough to protect the inauguration ceremony next week?
Well, I would say that it looks like we're playing catch up, right? That this is a reaction to the circumstances at the Senate building in D.C. Typically what you have, Christian, is a special events security calendar during which these important events are identified a long time in advance. There's a kind of a joint agency process where there's a risk assessment performed, and recommendations are made and resources are allocated from multiple agencies. It looks like they may now be doing that. I even theorize, Christian, if COVID has an impact of the ability for some of these fed, state, and local agencies to work together in the way that they normally have.
And what about this chatter online that you've seen reports from the FBI, whether you want to talk about militias or potentially even people who were involved in the riot at the Capitol last week, still talking about what they plan to do next and other threats outside of Washington?
Look, I really think that it's time for cooler heads to prevail and step up and apply leadership here. 2016, I provided a situation report and then later a briefing to the Department of Homeland Security on militias. I did so at their request, and I did so from a politically neutral perspective. And, I think what we have to do is stop pouring gasoline onto a raging fire and be surprised when it rages. We have to stop tossing around words like every militia is racist and every Democrat is a socialist or a communist, and really kind of stay focused on problem solving. So I believe there to be legitimate concerns. I'm not aware of any specific credible threats, but look at the environment that we're in. We have failed to address the concerns of millions of people, and we're going to have to do that before we see a reduction in risk associated with this entire episode.
Okay, Don Rondo, thanks so much for joining us this morning. We're going to keep in touch with you and hopefully talk to you again here as the inauguration is now set for Wednesday of next week. Thanks again, Don.
Thank you, Christian.